Hello and welcome to the Dreaming and Doing podcast with me, Nicky Raby. I'm an actor, coach, writer, speaker, podcaster and a mum. And in my coaching work, I work with creatives, personal brands, freelancers and small businesses. In my podcast, I talk about success, but not in a traditional sense. I have conversations with those who have built a business from something they love or who have made a pivot in their career. Also those who have built a brand or a job that maybe didn't exist when they were at school, and they found a way to monetize their skills, talents and expertise. I've spoken to loads of incredible people, coaches, designers, journalists, app creators, magazine editors, bloggers, content creators, authors, and all-round movers and shakers. I ask the questions that you want to know the answer to. So how they started, about money, saying no, saying yes, pitching, presenting, putting yourself out there even though it terrifies you, standing out in a busy online world, growing, scaling and making your work for you and your circumstances. The show notes are always at nickyraby.com/podcast and the conversation continues across social media, often on Instagram, my favourite platform, at Nicky Raby. Thanks so much for listening. It's great to have you with us. In today's episode, I'm talking to Emma Scott-Child, who is a creative extravaganza. I absolutely love following her Instagram for inspiration on creative projects, and Oscar and I have even made a few of them. Some haven't quite looked like the picture, but you know, it's all good. She runs a design studio with her husband in Brighton and also has a website that you may be familiar with called LadyLand, sharing crafty projects, and also has a book in the mix, which she talks about a little bit in this episode. If you want to come and join in the conversation, I would absolutely love that at Nicky Raby on Instagram. The show notes, as always, are on my podcast page of my website, nickyraby.com. Also, as well, if you feel like you've got something cooking, something up your sleeve, something that you want to sort of get started, but maybe you're not really sure which direction to go in, come over to my coaching page, nickyraby.com/coaching, and find out more about how we can work together. Also, as well, I don't know if I've said, but I am speaking at Stylist Live in November the 9th, which incidentally is my birthday. So if you are in London on that day and you are coming to the event, please let me know. I would love to say hi in person. And I'm speaking at 2:25 on the Spark stage. So hopefully I will catch you then. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please, as always, rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. Here's the episode with Emma. Hi Emma, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
Hello. Tell us what you do, what your business is. You're a woman of many talents.
I am. I sort of do a bunch of different things.
I'm very talented.
Well, often too many at once, but I try.
Yeah, exactly.
So I run a branding agency with my husband. We specialise in branding for hospitality and retail. And so for that I do, it's basically started as graphic design and now it all goes into all sorts of areas of brand positioning and social media and all of those sorts of bits and pieces. And then I also have a website called LadyLand, which is a sort of crafty lifestyle website where I focus on just getting a bit of creativity out of everyday things. So doing little craft projects, talking about interiors and what I'm doing to my house. And yeah, just basically trying to be a little bit inspirational for people who feel like they might be in a bit of a creative rut. So yeah, it's that kind of thing.
It is one of those things where people just say, oh, I'm not creative, I can't do that. Whereas, you know, you put some sort of bits of, I don't know, pipe cleaners on the table and everybody sort of leaps in immediately like, oh yeah, give us a go with that. That would be brilliant. Was creativity always part of your life growing up?
Yes, definitely. So my mum was a high school art teacher. And my dad worked in a museum and he built all the dioramas in the Natural History Museum in Sydney. Wow. So he would do things like he would come home with a latex lizard that he'd just made at work. Or he would say like things like, "Oh, I need a child's face for this exhibition." And, like I'd have to go in and get my face cast in plaster and latex to become part of the diorama. So there was always something being built or made or, planned in our house. So yeah, it was definitely a very creative upbringing that I had.
Yeah. And how did it start to sort of become a career?
Well, I decided from a young age that I wanted to be a book illustrator. And because I was just obsessed with drawing, and I'm an only child, so I guess a lot of that sort of playtime as a kid was just me with a box of Derwents just going for it.
Yeah. Hey, friends.
Yeah, I'm so cool.
Yeah. Well, I'm the best. We're all winning here.
Yeah, just doing like very serious portraits of my teddy bears. But I guess I wanted to do drawing and illustration. Then I got to the end of high school and said to my mum, I'm going to do fine art, which is what she did. And she said, absolutely not. You're going to do something that gets you a job. And at the time I was a bit miffed by that whole kind of thing.
Yeah, because at that stage you're like, Mum, don't worry, I've got this. I've got my life plan in place. And I don't need you anymore in this kind of way.
Exactly. It's like, did Frida Kahlo's mum say that to her? I don't think so. I mean, maybe she did. I don't know. But
stop crushing my dreams, Mum.
So I did the next best thing, which was a course in visual communication, which had all sorts of things involved in it. So it had illustration. It was also graphic design, filmmaking, photography, and advertising. So it was sort of all levels of creative careers that I did. And then I went through that, and by my final project, I created a magazine. And at that point, I thought I really want to get into publication design and art direction and magazines. And so I left uni thinking, right, my career is going to be designing magazines and designing CD covers. Both of those things aren't particularly lucrative anymore. So I had to sort of make a little bit of a U-turn at some point and catch up with what is around now, what jobs are around. And
damn the internet.
Yeah, damn the internet. Took away CD covers as a career option.
You scumbag. Oh, God.
So yes, sort of I've taken quite a few twists and turns through different things, through art directing fashion campaigns, doing a lot of online. I used to work at ASOS designing their homepage. I worked for Damien Hirst designing coffee table books. And then I had kids and I thought I want to work for myself. And so I sort of reinvented myself again, doing branding and graphic design with my husband.
And did you know that you had like a hidden entrepreneur dying to get out inside you?
I mean, I've always not been very good at group work. I've always...
Because you always get somebody in the first instance going, guys, I don't mind what we do, but like, we're going to do this. And you're like, oh, you're quite scary. Yeah, I'm usually that one. I'm usually the one. Me too, if I'm fair. Me too.
And so I figured out after a while that, I think I definitely work better when I'm the one sort of calling the shots. Makes me sound like a total fascist.
Yeah. My way or the highway, guys, just saying.
But I think it's definitely, I like to say there's two types of people. There's the hip-hippers and the hoorayers. And I'm definitely a hip-hipper, and then everyone else says hooray. And like I sort of just like get stuck in and get on with it. And so there's always been that kind of side to me, like, for, doing group work and in terms of, sort of creative projects and things like that. So being a creative director was always sort of probably the best option for me.
Yeah, definitely. And how did it start in terms of when you had kids, sort of what those first steps were in terms of saying, right, I'm actually going to go out alone? Because I think sometimes people have this glamorous notion of like, I was just pregnant and I knew it wasn't going to work, and then I just like built this business, and you're like, oh, but it's so hard sometimes. I mean, if you're thinking about it and listening to it, obviously it's easy and it'll be great for you, but it's it's sort of, what did you do first, or what really helped you to gain momentum?
So I didn't at first. I didn't think I want to work for myself. I was sort of convinced that I would get myself to a point working for other people where I'd be in a sort of a position where I could sort of steer a creative project. And when I was pregnant, I was made redundant by Damien Hirst, which was great. After he just sort of sold £5 billion worth of paintings, and they went, sorry, would you? But it wasn't just they were doing a big sort of cutback. It wasn't just me, so I didn't take it personally.
We don't like pregnant people here. Can you get out? Oh my God!
They didn't know I was pregnant, so it wasn't.
That's fine.
Yeah, it was a bit of an awkward situation. I think if they'd known, they wouldn't have done it. So yeah, I then freelanced a little bit and really enjoyed it. Just sort of while I was pregnant, so I sort of didn't have a job at that point. Just sort of working here and there in different ad agencies, which I really liked. And then when I went back to work, so I had my son, and when he was 1, I decided to go back to work. And I went and worked at ASOS, and that was mainly because we wanted to buy a house. And as a freelancer, you basically cannot do that. It's so hard, and you have to have so many. I think it's like 2 years worth of self-employment to be able to get a mortgage and all this sort of stuff. And at that point, my husband was also self-employed, so he was freelancing. So I kind of, I said, okay, well, I'll be the one that gets the salary position, so we can get the mortgage. And I worked there for 2 years, kind of knowing it wasn't what I wanted to do. But it was really interesting working for such a big machine, and it was right when they really expanded. And so we would do these photo shoots with 30 models, and it would last 5 days, and it was, 3 different photographers working at once. And as a learning curve, it just, it was amazing. But it just really wasn't conducive to being a mum. And it was so hard. And I think, I've had lots of friends who have left their jobs when they had a baby and are saying to me, I don't think I'll go back. I think I'll find something else. And I always say to them, just always remember that when you go back, if you're going into a new job, you're going to have to the basic things when you're still breastfeeding and you're still up in the night, things like remembering everyone's names, remembering what you're meant to be doing.
Remembering your own name.
Yeah, finding a new route to work, all of that stuff is actually really draining. And I kind of have wished that I could have gone back to an original job where everyone would have sort of at least given me a bit of leeway with that.
Yeah, because certainly that first year as well, you're still in that I need somebody to feed me and to provide me with a gift box of snacks at all times, because you're just you need that caring, you're in that caring capacity so much that you need other people to do that for you as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it was such a rude shock kind of going into this workplace where no one else was a parent and having this sort of other life that everyone else was completely unaware of. And it was, in working in fashion, it's quite a superficial place. So people would be obsessing over bangles or candles or, and I would just be thinking, I really need my kid to start talking because I think there's something wrong with him. When you've got sort of those things going on in your mind, someone's talking about what ankle boots they're wearing.
And everybody's in a crop top. You're like, guys, I just can't deal.
Yeah. Yeah, so that, the thing I got to a point working there, it was just difficult, the hours and the childcare. And there were times where I wasn't seeing Elliot between Monday and Friday because the hours were so long. And I just thought, yeah, this has to change. And Tom had been doing his own freelancing, and he'd got to the point where he had a couple of clients where he didn't have to go in and work in-house at various places. He could just work from home. So he was doing all the mumming, essentially, all the sort of classic mum jobs. And then once we got our mortgage and we sort of had that sorted, I thought, I want to do what he's doing. He's having a great time working in his pants and not talking about crop tops. And so
it'd be a bit weird if you're like, oh, and you're wearing a crop top from ASOS. This is weird.
Yeah, so I quit and we jumped into this world where we were both self-employed with a new mortgage. And it was a bit of a leap but I'm so glad we did it. And it was so worth it, because then over the next few years, I started taking on my own clients. We had some big ones to start with who we got in sort of at the ground floor. So we had a few startups. One of them was Brixton Brewery, who were friends of ours, and they were starting their brewery, and we, we were like, we'd love to do the branding. And so we were on board with that right from the start. And that was a real boost, because I just had this one really good job that I was really excited to get out there. And it was the sort of job that lots of people were seeing, and, I was getting some good feedback on it and getting quite a bit of encouragement. So, yeah, so we started off with just a few clients each, and then it's been 5 years now that we've been building up the business. So, and in the meantime, I had another baby and did the sort of working for myself, working at midnight kind of thing. And now we've got to the point where we have our own studio. We have 4 people working for us. And we're about to hire another one. And yeah, we're actually running a design agency.
It's amazing. And you've moved to Brighton.
And we moved to Brighton, yeah. So we were in Brixton for a long time, and then we just needed some more space, and we were lucky enough that we don't have to commute. So moving to Brighton means we can actually work in Brighton and not have to travel up and down to London. So that was about a year ago, and we've just moved into our new studio in Brighton.
Ooh, so exciting. And how has it been, how did it start, like when you started working with your husband as well? Because I feel like, never have I really lived in my house and got as much for my money living in my house, because I'm here all the time. There's days where you're like, gosh, I think I've been here about 4.5 hours the whole week. But how is that sort of parenting and navigating your relationship, but also like being the boss woman as well?
Yeah, it's tricky. It's really tricky.
We drink a lot.
Yeah, a lot of drinking. Yeah. Desk booze.
Yes.
We have had to be really careful with how we run the business together, because it's very easy to fall into the trap of having an argument in the studio in front of everybody. And me saying to him, "Oh, I'm not sure about that font," is very similar to me saying, "Why did you leave your pants on the floor?" And it's trying to make that separation. So we don't work on projects together anymore. We have our own separate clients, and sometimes we'll start a job together and we'll both do a few ideas, and the client will choose one route or another, and then whoever route that is, then that one of us will take on that job. So yeah, we definitely can't work on projects together. And when we do, we have to have clear roles. So one of us will be the creative director and the other one will be the art worker or the designer. And we have to sort of set that out before we step into looking at the work.
Yeah, oh, that sounds so good, because I think actually doing all the that kind of really sickly couple, like we just love spending time together all the time, and that's kind of nice in the first 7 weeks of a relationship, but throwing kids and sleep deprivation and having to get stuff done into the mix, it's not that romantic.
No, it's not. It's really not, especially when, we know that we can do the work after hours. So we've had to become a lot more disciplined with the way we use our time. So we don't just go, oh, actually, I'm going to do the Sainsbury's shop now on Tuesday morning and then, work all evening, when that's completely destroying any time we have that might be sitting on the couch next to each other watching telly, which I've realised is really valuable. If we're sitting on the couch, artworking, packaging, it's not actually a home life.
Yeah.
So it has to be kept separate. But that said, it's really, really useful when you're on a deadline and you're just exhausted to have someone else right there who can do the job with you and who can just, go, okay, you do that one, I'll do that one, we're going to get it done by midnight. So on the rare occasion that we do have to do that, it is really helpful having an extra
and just
design.
having that partner in life who gets you and knows what you want from life. Sometimes I've had it with coaching clients in the past where it kind of goes in that point of like, not sure what he's going to say about that. And I think, oh no, like that must be so exhausting to have to try and convince somebody that this is the way that you want to live and the way you want to run it. And you're kind of convincing your nearest and dearest.
Yeah, definitely. I think like going out on your own and doing your own thing where you do have that financial instability, it's so important to have the support of your partner, and to have that, and for them to realize that what you're doing isn't just a sort of a folly. You know, when I was the one with the salary job, I wasn't sort of looking at Tom at home thinking, oh well, you know, he could be doing something else. You know, he's just doing his graphic design for fun while he's looking after the kids. It was, you know, you have to definitely take it as this is the beginning of a career. This isn't just flipping about pretending to make a business for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like sometimes it's not, I mean, it is much more now, but if I'd been at school and said, you know, I want to have a personal brand, people would have just been like, you're an idiot. Like, what even is that? I mean, I still slightly feel that is the case, but that sort of just wasn't championed. You know, doing your own thing was risky, or it was just kind of, you know, there was something wrong with you. It wasn't celebrated then like it is now. I mean, we didn't have the internet in the 90s. I'm sure we did, but we didn't in our school. Things took a lot longer to get to the north, but
yeah, same with Sydney.
Yes.
Yeah, but I always felt like at that point, like you had to have an invention. You know, like if you were gonna be someone who works for yourself, you had to invent something like, you know, the cronut or whatever it is.
Yeah, some kind of latch that your dog could open the door without you being there. Or, yeah, it was so weird. The infomercials, especially when we got digital TV, it was like, oh, I didn't know I needed that, but absolutely I'm buying 30 of them. How has it shifted for you now, sort of bringing on a team, and what works for you in terms of being like, hi, we're creative and we're really enjoying this process, but also like we need to get this done and you need to lead from the front?
Yeah, so this is the next stage that we've been going through for the last year, which has been quite tricky. So we've had for the last 3 years we've had freelancers working for us, and we've had our own studio that we rented from a friend, and it was great. It was sort of like the sort of shared house version of a design studio, where there's not a huge amount of responsibility, and we've been taking on some really big clients that we've been working for Debenhams and for Channel 4, and you know, we're, you know, running it really well, but there's a lot of the business side of it that Tom and I just don't know about, because our background isn't in design agencies, and you know, we've barely been employed. We've been working for ourselves. So things like HR and all that sort of stuff, it's just, you know, completely foreign to us. So it has been a real struggle this last year, because we've, you know, we don't want to have freelancers anymore. We want to have permanent staff. We want to be building our business, you know, and getting junior designers who we can train up and all of that sort of stuff to make it a more of a long-term thing. And the thing I've realized is you just have to get people who know exactly what they're doing. Like, you know, I've been looking at employment contracts for 3 months now, trying to get my head around it. And then one of my mates just said to me, you know, I used to do HR for a massive hotel. I was like, oh, okay, great.
Are you available tonight?
Like, okay, so, you know, I've hired her as a freelance HR person, so she's gonna do that, and you know, it's worth the money, because it's going to take me 3 days sitting there staring at it trying to figure it out. It's going to take her 10 minutes. So it's just learning that although you are running your own business, you don't have to do every single bit, and there are going to be bits that are going to bamboozle you, and it doesn't mean you're not good at running a business. It just means you're not trained in that thing, and that's why it's a specific job.
Yes.
So there's been quite a lot of that sort of stuff that we've been doing with our sort of expansion, but it is tricky because Tom and I are both from the creative side. You know, usually in a design agency, you might have a creative and a business person as the core directives. So we're sort of trying to build up that business, the accounting, the account management, and all of that kind of thing. We lean very heavily on the people that we employ for that sort of thing, which can be quite tricky at times.
But I think you're so right. I think sometimes there's this pressure to know all of the things, and how can we? And also sometimes you don't know stuff until you meet it, and you're like, oh, I didn't even read. It's like, you know, getting to a part of the form where you're like, I didn't read that sentence, and I needed to read that. They do need costumes for today. I guess you'd be good at that. But so I guess, how do you add in your own strand of the stuff that you're doing with LadyLand?
Yeah, so LadyLand started off because I was doing a lot of work that was very structured and for clients. So when you're a graphic designer, it's very similar to being a hairdresser. You know, like someone can walk in and say, I want this thing, and you can say, well, I don't think that's going to work. But at the end of the day, they're the client. You have to do what they want, whether you like the design or not. And I think from a creative person point of view, when you sort of feel like, you know, there's a trapped artist in there who just wants to just be left alone and do their own little, you know, piece of art. And so LadyLand was kind of that for me. It started off as just having some ideas to do some creative craft projects and some bits of home improvement. And then being able to do that in a way that I could just create the thing, finish it, and then broadcast it, and no one would say, that's great, but can you make it blue? Yeah, so LadyLand actually started, there was actually 8 of us at the beginning. We were all the ladies. And it came about because I had a bunch of mates who, we all had different specialties, and we would all meet up and we would do a kind of stitch and bitch kind of night where we would bring knitting and craft projects and drink wine, and then sort of forget to knit and just talk rubbish.
And can't remember how you got home.
Yeah. And then all our husbands are like, I thought you were knitting. Like,
where's my scarf?
But we all had these like specific different talents. So one was an interior designer, another was a fashion editor, another was a beauty editor. I'm doing my crafty thing, and one of the other ladies is amazing at baking. And we're like, well, let's come like bring this together. And we can each take a section, and we've basically got a lifestyle website right here. We can all like create the content. Which was great for a while, and it was great. You know, this was 5 years ago when blogs were really huge, and it was less about social media aspect and more about the sort of content on a website, which was great. And then, you know, as you would imagine with a group of women in their 30s, everyone had babies at various different points, and everyone's levels of commitment sort of went up and down. And also some of the girls who were doing it, you know, did like Kelly, who was doing the fashion editing, was doing a really good job of it. So she actually got hired to do that for a brand. Went and did that, and Bella went and did that.
And then it's not as fun. I can't drink wine there.
Yeah, exactly. You have to get paid. You have to turn up.
Oh God.
So it worked really well. You know, lots of the girls got quite a lot out of it. And then it got to the point where we sort of had to say, well, you know, what is it that we're doing? And we did quite a bit of sponsored posts, and we created content for Yahoo and Boots and like quite a few big online brands. But it was a point where I had to say, okay, is this my business or is my design agency my business? And I sort of realised I was spreading myself very thinly across everything. So what ended up happening was LadyLand just became my own little sort of craft outlet, and I focused on the design studio, and the other girls all had their other things that they were sort of continuing on with. You know, one of them had started her own interior design agency during that time, you know, so we'd all sort of grown beyond it. But it was a really lovely point when we started. It was really great to have this moment in time where we were all kind of emerging our own businesses as a creative outlet.
That's a really good point of sort of on creative front, because I know sometimes I can spread myself too thinly because I just get excited about things and I go, yeah, I want to be part of it. And I had that with my blog in the beginning where the categories were like open-ended. I mean, you know, I was showing like some weird halloumi burgers that I'd made, and I'm like, I am not the best person to photograph this. Like, I don't know how people do it, but I'm not that person. And actually taking that step back has been much better in terms of knowing what I'm saying yes to, knowing what I'm saying no to, and then you've got some sort of foundations to find the benchmark of sort of how that works. How important has Instagram been, and what is your relationship with it?
So Instagram has been hugely important to me in the last few years, definitely. I go back and forth with it because, you know, in this sort of love-hate kind of way that I think a lot of us do. But it's interesting in the way that it's been useful to me. In terms of my graphic design agency, it isn't that useful at all in terms of promoting that, mainly because I think the accounts that do really well really have a personal side to them, and that's what's interesting about Instagram. It's not that interesting to follow a design agency and see their work all the time and their portfolio. And the thing I've realized is there's, you know, I've gone through phases where I've had maybe 4 different Instagram accounts and managing them all at the same time. And
to the point where your husband's like, where are you? Who are you today?
Yeah. But I've sort of seen how quickly it moves and how quickly it changes for brands and for personal brands and as a personal account. And what's really useful about that is I can teach my clients that. So when I have my branding clients, I know about it because I'm right in it, and I know the algorithm has just changed and all of that kind of stuff. So when I'm creating brands, like we had a brand last year that we did called LadyLand Cafe, which is in London, and they came to me and they said, we want to be Insta famous. That's what we want. They didn't know what they were going to sell in their cafe, what it was going to look like, what the main brand, the point of the brand is, you know, or any of that. So we came up with a strategy for them that would create the most beautiful cafe in London. And it, you know, everything was designed for Instagram, like the tabletops, the lighting, everything. And in doing so, that was a really successful project. They're now got like 130,000 followers or something crazy in the last year. And
that's a lot of sandwiches being consumed.
It's a lot of avocado. Yes. But that's, that is very much like creating the Instagram machine for them, and knowing what works, knowing the quantities to be posting, the times to be posting, and all that sort of thing. The other side of Instagram is the social, friendly, human side, which I really enjoy, and I've got so many wonderful friends from it, and some of my closest friends from it have come out of Instagram, and that's been really fantastic. But the way to do that is to actually connect with people in real life. So yes. You can comment on each other's pictures as much as you like, and you can DM each other and that sort of thing. But unless you're seeing people in the flesh, those friendships, you form those friendships once you hang out with their kids and all of those sorts of things. So yeah, it just, for me, I think Instagram is brilliant on many different levels, but the key thing is to remember what your account is actually for. Is it business? Is it a portfolio? Is it to get as many followers as possible to sell as many avocado sandwiches as you can? Or is it to just give people a little insight into who you are and your life and connect with people? And you can't do all of that in one account.
No, that's so important. Yeah, absolutely. And these people who just like leave comments of like, nice profile, you're like, who are you? What do you want? Like, they kind of irritate me because it's just like, it's not aligned to why I'm there either.
Yeah.
But are there any things that you do every day that just sort of keep you, I don't want to say like the best version of yourself, but like keep you in check and stop you from feeling overwhelmed and confused and like you want to cry like Pat Butcher in the square?
I'd really like to find out what those things are because that would be really useful to me right now. Something I've realised is that I can no longer stay up really late. Yeah. And I just used to be such a night owl, and I realized, well, I'll do that tonight. And yep, I'll do that after the kids are in bed. I'll give myself an extra project. And I've now got these like quite embarrassing alarms on my phone that come off.
Emma, it's time for bed.
It is, because I was chatting to a friend about like, oh, I need some help. I need someone to help, with the laundry and this and that. And I don't have. I'm Australian, so I don't have my family here. You don't have like my mum coming around. This sort of, I see these other families where I'm like, oh my god, there's like a nana there that comes and sorts
drops
things,
the ironing off, and brings something in a Tupperware, and you're like, no, that doesn't. I mean, my mum lives down the road, but she doesn't do that. But she does do childcare, which I will take that over. There's always takeaways.
Brilliant, that's brilliant. But yeah, I always sort of had this idea of like, oh, I need this thing, and then I realised, no, I felt like I needed an au pair for me. Like I needed an au pair to come and say to me, okay, Emma, time for bed now. Have you eaten any vegetables today? Those sorts of things. So I've set up all these alarms on my phone, and one of them is at 9:30. It says, get ready for bed, and then at 10 o'clock it's like get into bed, and then 10:30 it's like it's time to go to sleep now.
11, I love you.
Yeah, love you, night. But I've set different songs, so like the final one, the song is like All Night Long by Lionel Richie.
Amazing.
And that's something, even if I'm not in bed, even if I am going, actually I need to get some work done, it just makes me aware of the time.
Yes.
Aware of the fact that I have just been sitting on the sofa just staring out the window for the last hour.
Thinking about Lionel.
Yeah, I've just been scrolling through Instagram, like doing absolutely nothing. So that's the only thing I've really got a handle on.
But that's a really good place to start, like awareness is key, and like just checking in with it, because I guess there's always a to-do list. There's always another letter from nursery, like, can you just bring in this, or like, we're thrilled to announce, and you're like, oh, what else? What do you need now? It's the life admin and keeping everything ticking along is it's full on. I've got one final question, which is, where would you like to be in 5 years' time?
Ooh, we've been talking about this quite a lot lately in our company. So there's sort of the company side of it and then the personal side of it. The company side of it is that I think because we're growing quite quickly and people keep saying, oh, wow, soon you'll have 10 people. And I feel like, actually, I don't want to be managing 10 people. What I want to be doing is be doing the same amount of work, just getting paid twice as much to do it.
Yes.
So it's a focus on getting clients that are, at a point where they're willing to spend a lot more on a brand. That's not to say we wouldn't still work with the startup kind of stuff as well, but it's getting the balance of not just having startups who are like scraping together their first bits of cash, and working with some bigger companies that might be doing rebrands and those sorts of things. So there would be sort of balancing that out, and also I feel like in terms of sort of a general life kind of thing, it's just slowing down a bit. I feel like the last 10 years it has been, like jobs and babies and buying a flat and then buying a house and then, having another baby and then all these things. And we've finally got to the point where we're now in our new studio. We're in our house that we'll hopefully be in for a long time. And I hope we can just sort of coast. I hope soon we're at the point where we can just sort of be coasting. And then, you need to bring an orange in for school on a Tuesday will be like maybe the only thing I need to remember on a Tuesday, not, all of the other stuff, employment contracts and insurance and all that sort of stuff. So it is just, my goal would be now, I feel like I've done a lot of the groundwork, and it is just getting to a point where we can just sort of coast a bit.
Yeah, I feel like, that sense of when you turn 30, like there's such a 29, I'm going to turn 30. And actually 30 is when you like really sort of put your back into it, as it were, or your back goes out, as mine did when I had my son. But it's that sense of like, yeah, they're sort of like building up the foundations for the next, it feels like there's a lot of graft in the 30s.
Definitely. I feel like that. I feel like, when we were trying to get that mortgage, and we sort of had this plan of like, I just need to stick it out at ASOS for 6 more months, and then we can start the thing we want to do. And there has just been this kind of imaginary ladder that we've been climbing up. And we're not the most organized people. It's not like we sat down and had a 5-year plan of this is what we're going to do. But it was just, a lot of hard work of like, okay, now we move to the next thing. Now we move on to the next thing. And at some of those points, we didn't feel ready to make those leaps. We didn't, I didn't feel ready to, go into freelance work, but I was made redundant. I didn't feel ready to get our first studio, but we had a screaming baby and Tom needed to get out of the house. So we rented a studio space, and sometimes life kind of pushes you into these directions that, forces you to take the next step up. But which I'm quite grateful for now. Although it has been quite exhausting.
Yeah, because actually those graphics or those quotes that you see on something like Instagram of the woman standing on a cliff kind of inhaling and getting ready to make the leap, that's not how I'm feeling when I make those leaps in my business. It's either like looking through bank statements or crying on the floor or just going, oh my goodness, I've got to make this happen and I've got to make it work. If people want to come and find you, where shall they come?
So you can find me on Instagram as LadyLand with 2 underscores either side of the word. Or also I'm on there as Junction Studio Brighton, which is our design agency. And if you want to go and have a look at the LadyLand website, it is thisisladyland.com. And I think I can say this. I don't know. I think so. I've got a book coming out soon. So that's very exciting, which will be crafty kind of projects, which will be a lot more of the sort of LadyLand stuff.
So exciting. That's so great that this, how did it happen? Can you say? Maybe not.
I can say, yeah, I was working on, so my friend Holly DeCruz is a hypnobirthing teacher, and I was designing her book, as I do as a freelance book designer, and got chatting to her publisher, who just sort of casually said, well, have you ever thought of doing your own book? And I sort of went, yes, oh my God.
No, I've never thought of that, but thank you. Yeah, oh, wow, what a lovely, it's like a Simon Cowell moment.
Yeah, and I've designed so many books for so many other people, and sometimes I sit there designing these books going, I could do this, I could make a book.
This is shit.
So yeah, and this is exactly one of those little push kind of leaps. Like I've had it in my head for a year that I'm going to put together a proposal. I'm going to get a book agent. I'm going to do this thing. I haven't done it. And it has just been this person saying, great, send me some ideas next week. And I'm like, okay, great. And I've done that. And, and I've, amongst all the other things I've been doing this year, been pulling together proposals for this book. So it is going to happen, which is very exciting. And it's going to be, craft for parents who think they hate craft. So it's going to be just stuff that isn't messy and isn't difficult and is actually fun, to take the sort of annoying crafty side out of it. Because I think a lot of people think that crafty people like me, we all sit around knitting our own knickers and, everything's very complicated, but it's not.
Gosh, imagine the infections you could get by knitted knickers. Oh my goodness. Now, Esther Corrin, who's a journalist who's been on the podcast, episode 15, if you want to go back and listen to anyone, but she always has this thing of going, oh no, they want to do craft, and it's like opening that kitchen cupboard of like all the madness that is falling out.
Yeah, Yeah, and so I mean that's basically been my studio table for the last few weeks, because I want to focus on things that everyone has in their house. I don't want to be using sort of nutty objects like embroidery hoops and things that everybody has. But I have been sort of like sitting there staring at a sponge and a paper cup and a piece of string, like, okay, we're gonna turn this into a chicken. This is what we're gonna do.
Because who doesn't love a chicken? Easter is coming, and it won't happen by itself.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's so exciting. And such a thing of like, just get yourself in those rooms. I think sometimes we do feel like it's going to be that one moment, but you've been building up to this, and it's your time.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing. It wasn't just a moment of she just decided to ask me that question. It's a 5-year blog of creative projects that led her to that question. So yeah, and it is just like taking that opportunity. The thing I realized when I was working with the other LadyLand girls was the confidence levels in everyone is completely different. And, you know, an opportunity would come up and one of us would be like, yeah, let's do it. And 3 other people would be saying, but we can't possibly do that. And, you know, and then we'd sort of be half and half of like, no, let's just try, you know. And it is that kind of fake it till you make it. Which is so valuable when you're building your own thing, especially with creativity. You've just got to jump in and believe in yourself. And if you fuck it up, you fuck it up.
Exactly. And you've just got to be that like American diner person, like, sure, you're welcome, of course, here coming right up, and just sort of go for it and keep saying yes.
Yeah, I mean, I've had those projects where I had to get halfway through a project and it's completely fucked up, and I've gone, you know what, I can't do this, and I'm sorry, and it was a terrible mistake. That does happen. But it doesn't mean you'll never work again. You know, you've got to take every opportunity, I think.
Definitely. Oh, I've learnt so much there. I can't wait to read your book. It'll be brilliant. And Oscar and I made those tissue paper flowers and gave them, and they were a bit wild. And we gave them to my mum, and she sort of had this thing of like, do I put them in a vase? What do I do? She was trying to categorise the creativity, like what's expected. I was like, well, if you could just make a garland out of it, that would be great. But thank you so much, Emma. You've been so brilliant, and I know loads of people will get so much from it. So thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I would love to hear what you thought of the episode and share any takeaways with me. Come and find me across social media at Nicky Raby, or you can visit the podcast page, nickyraby.com/podcast.